Board is called to order. I will note that all members are present. I'm advised that Mr. and Mrs. Lyon, our first public hearing applicant, are not yet here, so I will ask that the agenda be adopted by unanimous consent, switching the order of items 7.1 and 8.1. Is there any objection?
No.
Hearing none, we will revise the agenda as such. For the minutes of October 14th, 2012, noting that Mr. Durham and I were both absent, I will first ask, are there any corrections or additions to those minutes?
Not from me.
None.
Secondly, I will ask for a roll call vote, a simple yes or no. Mr. Gates, do you accept the minutes as presented?
I do.
Yes.
Yes.
I will abstain. Mr. Durham?
I'll abstain.
Okay. So minutes approved, 3-0, 2 exemptions. We have a vacant consent agenda. Public comment. Is there anyone here who would like to speak to us on an item not on the agenda? Seeing no one, we will proceed to item 8.1, design review, Hurley's Restaurant.
Well,
Before,
they just arrived, if we can switch it back.
okay. So I'm going to reopen the adoption of the agenda and ask for unanimous consent to approve the agenda as originally presented. Is there objection?
Nope.
Okay, there's none, so we will proceed to item 7.1, design review for 1890.
Mr. Chair, I live within the 500-foot radius of the house in question, so I'll have to recuse myself.
Thank you, Mr. Anglin. Sandra, pray go ahead with the staff report.
This is a design review application for an approximately 292 square foot addition on the southwest corner of the existing residence. And it is consistent with the setbacks, the height, and the FAR requirements of the ordinance. What you see is the design in the drawings is a stucco building and with the wainscot removed, and the windows are multi-pane windows flanked with shutters designed to match existing. So we don't have any issues with the design aspects of the proposed addition. The concern raised in the staff report was the applicant's request to remove the mulberry that's in the front yard, and we had requested, or we were proposing a condition that it be retained and that efforts be taken to save it. Since publication of the staff report, the applicant has submitted the photo that's at each of your seats, and what it shows is a ladder beneath the tree, the center line of which marks the southwest corner of the proposed building addition. And you can see that it does not appear very feasible to save the tree given the footprint of the proposed addition. I'll note that this area of the property, this corner, is just about the only area that's still developable that's inside the building envelope. And it represents the most feasible place to put the addition. And unless the options available to you would be perhaps to approve an addition that does not come out as far, that doesn't affect the tree. But I note that they are within the allowable FAR for the property as a whole in the addition. So options are to consider the removal of the tree. And one of the conditions or criteria that's reviewed is whether there is close proximity of an existing or proposed building, which in this case there is, and there's not really much opportunity to put the addition anywhere else. So staff would revise its recommendation to you and suggest that removal of the tree is acceptable. That will change the proposed conditions that are before you, and we would strike proposed condition number 4 and 5, and we would suggest a new condition that conditions the removal of the tree with 1 or 2 replacement trees for the front yard. And we would work with the applicant on the selection and location of those trees because different species would be acceptable for ones that are on the private property and whether they versus ones that would overhang the right-of-way. So we don't need an answer on that tonight, but we would condition replacement trees. And the applicants are here to present their project, and I'm available to answer questions if you have any.
So, are there questions of staff?
None for me.
Mr. and Mrs. Lyon, would you care to speak to us? Sure. Thanks. Please come up.
Okay, if you guys have photos, I want.
I must beg, Mr. Lyon, that you speak from the microphone so you're
okay.
recorded. We can hear you okay, but
Okay.
our many viewers at home
I do
can't.
have some photos in the computer if you want to go that far. I put together a little summary, and I'll give you a copy of this when I'm done going over it. The basic idea here is to expand the living area, basically, of our current home that we've been living in for the last 20 years. And I think those that are neighbors, we have a few in the audience, could testify that we have kept this house well maintained, and I think we're fairly decent citizens here in Yountville. We basically want to expand, like I say, expand the living area, and the 300 square feet is basically for the kitchen. We want to make a great room, including the kitchen, the dining room, the living area, and so on. We also want to vault the ceilings, so there would be a change in the roof line, I think for the better, artistically speaking. We would remove some walls inside, creating the great room, and a laundry room and pantry, which my dear wife here has totally deserves now that she's finished with her working years, or her so-called work. She still works pretty dang hard. Okay, there will also be a slight modification to the bedroom, in which we would take out the existing closets and build a walk-in closet that would expand into that great area. A new garage door is going to be installed, and there will be natural light provided throughout by the addition of windows and into the garage. And I'll give you a copy of this little handout I made. Basic features, the things that you can expect from this house. The roof line would be changed, and like I say, I think it would make it more aesthetically pleasing. It'd be vaulted ceilings with two windows instead of one, with a small window up in the peak of the roof. The wood stove would be removed to never again pollute the air in Yountville. The roof shingles would have an energy-saving effect with the new model reflective backing. All siding and brickwork would be removed and updated to total stucco. The bricks reused for walkways and driveways, so we're not going to get rid of them. The entire project includes some seismic upgrades so that in the event of a catastrophic earthquake, the property would be standing, being that there is a fault close by. Like I mentioned, the additional windows along the west side and larger windows on the south side would provide quite a bit more natural light, thus not needing the electricity. And there will also, we're going to be putting in a solar array to generate some electricity for the property. The washer, dryer, cleaning supplies, food storage to be moved from the garage into the house, which I think is a more appropriate place for them. And like I say, the problem is the tree, and we love that tree. We've had that tree there for 20 years. The tree is a problem for this, and I guess you have this photo. But to just give you the exact dimensions, it's 33 inches south of the proposed building, and it's 7 inches west. So the new construction includes a 2-foot overhang and a 5-inch gutter, which puts it pretty much into the middle of the crown of the tree. We are requesting that you opt to allow us to remove that tree, and we would promise to plant at least one new tree. I did do a little research on the mulberry tree. The mulberry tree is not indigenous to California. It actually comes from the former Soviet bloc area near Russia and Georgia and so on. So we're not ruining the native species there, although we did like it. The other thing about that is it is a very fast-growing tree. We prune it back to the nubs every year. And in that picture, it was pruned back in January, and that's where it is today. When we first bought the house, it hadn't been pruned for a couple of years, and it was encroaching the house where the current house is now. So I would ask you, and I think my wife is with me, and I know she's with me, to approve it. And if we could, we would move that tree, but it's a problem. And it was there before we got there, too. So, any questions?
Thanks very much. Questions of the applicant?
Okay. I'll give you copies of these things.
I do have one question for you.
Okay.
Would you find a condition that required you to plant 2 trees objectionable?
No.
That's my only question. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right. And
Thank you, Sam.
if I may, if you would hand that to Ms. Smith, and she'll make sure that copies are retained for the record.
They're all the same.
Okay.
They're just one page.
Okay.
One
Okay.
two-sided. Okay. Thank you.
Who'd like to begin with a discussion and perhaps take us toward a motion?
I'll take a shot.
Mr. Gates.
Thank you. I walk by this house every day. It's just an extremely ship-shaped, tidy piece of property, and really a credit to the town. Work hard to keep that corner looking sunny and organized. The tree, trees come and go, and I don't see any problem with removing the tree to make the property look good, and with the quality of the ownership here, I'm sure they'll do something extremely capable to replace it, enhance it, make that corner continue to look very nice. It's a nice project.
Mr. Scoggins, Mr. Durham, either of you care?
I guess I would second Bob's comments. I've been by the property as well, and it's very clean, and this project doesn't seem like it's out of sorts in terms of the zoning and planning ordinances outlined, and it seems like a good project, and if I was a neighbor, I'd be happy to have it next to me, so after it's finished, obviously. But, and I guess I would... I'm sure you will. I would second Jason's question about maybe 1 or 2 trees, just to add a little color. Perfect.
Mr. Durham, anything to add?
I agree with what's been said.
Great. It's fun to have a project that's easy to approve because it hits all the checklist items, which are typically the ones that are difficult. So I think there's a consensus, and I will go ahead and propose a motion. So I will move to approve the project as presented with the following changes to the attachment A, the proposed conditions of approval. Item number 4 will be deleted. Item number 5 will be deleted. We will replace those 2 conditions with one requiring the planting of 2 new replacement trees. I would like to suggest 24-inch box size, species and location to be determined between the applicant and staff. All in favor?
Second.
Aye.
Have a good evening. Good luck. Thanks very much. We will move on to 8.1 after we invite Mr. Anglin back. I suppose we must.
You don't have to. So, he's here.
That's it. Design review for Hurley's Restaurant. Before we hear this staff report, I will disclose I've met with the applicant, which included Mr. Prawl and Mr. Lampney, at the site and reviewed two of the drawings I see on site, and they shared their thoughts about the project with me.
I met with Mr. Caldwell as well yesterday to look at the property and the project.
I too have met with Mr. Caldwell.
I, three, have met with Mr. Caldwell and Bob Hurley.
And of course, it leads to me, who has also met with Mr. Caldwell.
So with all our disclosures taken care of, Mr. Tiernan, please.
Thank you. This is a proposal to expand Hurley's Restaurant. But we all know where Hurley's is. And at the back of house, it's in 3 stages. The first stage is going to deal with this electrical panel area that's at the north. I'll go north to south. There's also glass recycling that goes on in here in this enclosure. The second stage is the new building addition, and I'll step up to the plan in a second and go over these areas. And the last is a enclosure for trash and also linen and wood storage. The total new square footage that's enclosed floor area, conditioned floor area, would be 240 square feet, and it takes the existing FAR from 0.22 to 0.235. So it's within the floor area ratio limitations. And let me grab this microphone up here. Try to get to where everybody can see what I'm doing here. This is the electrical panel starting at the north, and it currently has a setback of about 2.5 feet down to about 1 foot. This is essentially going to remain in its configuration, except it'll be squared off to the building rather than it runs a little skew to the building right now. This plan shows the preferred alternative for the applicant is to enclose this area entirely with louvered doors and a tile roof over it, and that's what they would like. There's another option they're showing here of it, similar to what is there now with the green screen. There would be more vegetation grown on the green screen, and these barn doors that are shown, and it's open with a new awning over it. This second area here is, if you can see this highlighted line, that's the edge of the existing wall of the building, and this will be continued all the way over for a distance of 30 feet from the existing edge of the panel, of the electrical panel storage area, to this area, and then enclosed here for a new enlarged walk-in, or enlarged walk-in, I should say, service area, storage and receiving, and a staff area and a new staff toilet area. Will all be enclosed area now. The new trash area will be an enclosure, not all the way enclosed, but it will have a linen storage here, have a roof over it though as well, and barn doors here and access on doors off of Yount as well. They're going to reconfigure the parking area that's currently a driveway that comes in, 2 small parking spaces up here, and this will be open with a new curb cut where they'll be pulling in to parking spaces that are approximately 19 feet in depth each, and then re-landscaping this area south of those parking spaces. So, let's see. The one thing that's going to be different, as you can see on this plan, they're showing cypress, Italian cypress, that would be in the planning area against the wall of the building. They've rethought that, and they're going to eliminate these in lieu of lower shrubs against the wall. And Mike is going to cover some of the amendments that they've proposed in that regard in his presentation. It's going to be new windows 3 new windows along this wall and awning over the door. There'll be a grease interceptor installed under the trash area. Those are the principal changes. Now, getting into some of these building heights, the existing building height is about 14 feet 5 inches. And they're dropping this parapet down for the new portion of the wall that comes along Yonge Street to approximately 11.5 feet. Staff pointed out in the staff report the mass of that wall. We've suggested some solutions to that and include stepping it down for the last 5 or 6 feet to 9 foot in height, and then treating the landscaping differently. They've already gotten rid of the cypress, so that was one of the suggestions that's been incorporated. We were also in an effort to further bring it down at the sidewalk level would be to have some arbors perhaps coming off of this wall with plant material on them, or it could be different treatments. That was just one suggestion. They do have the awning here that helps, kind of the same idea of creating a sense of enclosure at the sidewalk for the pedestrian experience. Should note, as pointed out in the staff report as well, the only setback that is prescribed in the zoning ordinance for commercial properties is the front setback at 15 feet, and that's because that's where the public experiences the building typically. Now, this is an unusual site being on, as we all know, on this point. So the front is debatable, what's really the front of the building, because you experience the building from a good 3 sides, and it's difficult to determine what the other setbacks should be. Usually the rear and side setbacks are set by the town council at time of approval. The only one that is set by ordinance is the front at 15. And I point that out because of this is a side where the public does walk down and they will experience that height. This wall here is a little over 11 feet in the council chambers, so it's going to be slightly more than what you see here, and that's going to be experienced at a distance of, from this corner wall, 3 feet, and then because the building wall is skewed to the sidewalk, it widens out to 5 feet 9 inches down at the electrical panel where that is. That's one concern of staff of what can be done design-wise to lower that mass. There's a faint line across this elevation that line is at 9 feet. It doesn't even have to be a parapet wall to match the existing. It could be, right now, the existing elevation shows they've got a tile coming off of there. Some other roof form solution may be up for consideration rather than matching the parapet of the existing. So that's one concern. The other concern, I'll go back here to the photos. And what I'm going through now are staff concerns of what's otherwise a completely acceptable project. We support the addition of the storage and that's needed, and we understand that. But in an attempt to address a couple of what's going to be lost and in the process of added to the project, what will perhaps could be improved, we're making these suggestions. This is the electrical panel area with the green screen. You can see what's growing on there right now is not doing a real successful job, but this could be added to. There's lots of climbing plants that could create a thicket to where this would be screened out. This is the other area of concern, and I know it's tied against what they're proposing as a location for the new trash storage area. That is a problem, but we're exploring retaining this I guess, shrub growing to a tree, however you want to put it. It's bigger than the trees around it. It creates a nice edge to both the sidewalk and softens the building, as well as contributes to the patio, the dining patio. It is a pretty massive canopy, but it also, what's going to be happening when the new addition goes up of the trash area, that line is going to be extended out to about here. So currently, some views you have across the site and through the dining patio over towards Coffee Caboose, those will be lost already. This does a nice job of sort of framing that and creating an edge rather than all hardscape at this point. And we were hoping to find some way to incorporate and retain the tree and incorporate it into the new design. One area over here I wanted to, this is where the new parking area is going to go, and you can see right now the parking spaces are currently kind of side-loaded to where they'll be straight in the same area essentially, and a more formal restricted parking area with a new curb cut will happen in this area that will not interfere with the sidewalk or the crosswalk that joins up with the walkway across the side next to the dining area. It will serve as a loading area for trucks that already tend to load there informally right now. So there's the item tonight is to consider this project, make recommendations. There's no action required other than making comments, recommendations, and suggested conditions of approval for benefit of the town council. This will go to the town council in the first meeting in December, and that's the 4th, and they will take it up there to take action on the project.
Thank you, Bob. Are there questions of Director Tiernan?
I have a question about the tree. And I spoke with Mr. Caldwell about the tree extensively when I visited the site the other day and have given it a fair amount of thought. We all want to be green and we want trees and all this, and I do as well. But this is hardly the drive-through redwood or something. This is a tree that was planted a long time ago and went nuts. And I walked the property again this morning after I walked up there and looked at it from every conceivable angle and tried to imagine what life would be like without that tree. I just can't find a negative. And from Bob Hurley's perspective, I learned and thought about the tree as something less than desirable for the people who are eating on the patio because of birds, bird droppings, bird harassment, bird noise, birds, which were definitely there. And then we're also asking the property owner to make a substantial financial investment in underground utilities, trap lines, whatever it is that's going on. It's none of it's cheap. And we're going to potentially allow this tree to be here and cause potential root damage and intrusion to these devices that we're asking this property owner to put in for his tenant. I just don't see the value of the tree, you know. Again, the owner and Mr. Hurley have very competent people to support them in decor, in gardening, landscaping. I just got a feeling they can figure out something to put in there in place of that tree that would be totally adequate. So I think the tree's overrated myself, but that's me.
Thank you, Bob. Does anyone have questions of staff before we hear from the applicant and ask the applicant any questions?
I have a couple questions. One, this is the only piece of property in Yountville that is a V-shaped lot. Is that a fair statement where we're dealing with this uncertainty about the setback on the rear side of the property?
Yes, it's a unique property in that regard.
Okay. Is there any concern or is there any ordinances around, based on their current idea of the trash area, is there a concern about the trash being as close as it's going to be to the patio and dining area? Is that an issue that we need to talk about, or am I just making that up?
It could be, yes. They do have the, as you can see on this roof, and otherwise enclosed, but I don't think it's, to that extent that it would prevent odors or flies, or that would help, yeah.
Okay. And then the last one I had was regarding that parking space, or the 2 parking spaces. I thought I saw somewhere in the staff report where delivery trucks could potentially use that space also. I don't know if that's what the intent of the report was, but it seems like if there were delivery trucks in that parking space, that they would be blocking the sidewalk, and that would be for me as a walker, that would probably be a concern.
Well, the delivery vehicles would be parked on the street adjacent to the sidewalk, so
that's
it
fine.
wouldn't
They wouldn't be
impede
using
access over that.
Okay, they wouldn't be
It
parking
would
in that space.
essentially block the 2 employee parking spaces for a while, but
Got it.
since they're employees,
Yep.
there's less
Then
usage.
strike, I'm not worried about
Okay.
that.
Well, yeah, I would add that they would probably be doing one or the other out in the street or all the way on the site. They should not be blocking the sidewalk when they're loading.
Right.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound like that's what the intent of that.
Isn't it designated as loading right now at the street?
Part of it, yeah. There's, you can
The
see
yellow curb,
faint
and we can see
yellow
the
curb
sign.
there in this photo.
Yeah.
24-minute zone.
Right.
It's not expressly a green curb loading zone only, but it's 24-minute.
I'm finished.
All right. Let's hear from Mr. Hurley, please. Good evening, Bob.
Good evening. Bob Hurley. I'm the owner of Hurley's Restaurant, of course. I love this project. It's something I've wanted to do for quite a long time. We put a lot of thought into it. In fact, we've talked to a lot of people about it over a long period of time. And thank each and every one of you. I want to thank each and every one of you for taking the effort to come and walk through the property. That meant a lot to us. I think we've already addressed some of the concerns of staff. So I appreciate their input, and we have actually looked at that a lot and have done some things. Obviously, the cypress trees are gone, which they weren't originally. I'd like to acknowledge the patience and the willingness of the town to work with me on this. I've been talking with people like Steve Rogers for well over a year now, throwing ideas back and forth, and with Mike Prawl when he was on staff, which is quite a while ago. So we've been talking about this for quite some time. I think you'll agree that since we've been at the location, we've greatly improved the property over the time we've been there, in as much as the economy has allowed. Both for its appearance and its functionality as a restaurant. The side street appearance of the restaurant has always been a concern of mine. In fact, the best part of my location is that it has 2 thoroughfares on either side, with hotels all around and a very high degree of visibility. The worst part of this location is that it has 2 thoroughfares on either side with hotels all around and a very high degree of visibility. It's a difficult location, as you can imagine, to work with. There is just no back alley to hide anything. There's no place to hide. What this project is about to me is to improve the functionality of the property, as Bob was going through the extra storage, extra walk-in space that we sorely need. We've even decided to put in an employee bathroom in order to mitigate the employees running back and forth to the bathrooms that the customers use, and to close the loop on all those issues that continue to haunt us about the backside of the restaurant. We want to take advantage of the opportunity also to put a finish on the backside of the property. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my project manager. First of all, I'd like to point out also that my landlord, Jay Caldwell, has been an incredible partner on this thing, working with me and trying to improve his property. and things he really didn't have to do, but he's really stepped up and made this project a lot easier and more inclusive than it would have been otherwise. I'd like to introduce, everybody knows Mike Prohl. He's my project manager, along with Kit Ashley, who is the architect of the project. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Before you step away, I have a direct question for you, and this is speaking to Mr. Scoggins' question earlier. Is it not true that you will need to submit these plans to environmental management?
I would imagine so, yeah.
So if they were to object to location of dumpsters, I think that will be picked up then. Do you agree?
Right, that's right.
Thanks very much. Mr. Prohl?
Good evening, Board. Thank you for your time this evening. Unfortunately, because of the holiday yesterday, we weren't able to recolorize and get printed back some of the changes that we've already talked about. This lower drawing, Bob was talking to the upper one. The lower one shows that we now have a barn door in a natural wood color, and that we do have some low-lying shrubs here. We were not able in time to take out the cypress trees. So I just wanted to make that clarification on this. I think the two issues that we really want to address here is the building massing and the height, and then the tree removal. Could you possibly bring up the, in the PowerPoint presentation, there's a view for the heights? We can talk to those first. Bob mentioned that back when I was Public Works Director here, I used to drive by there every morning to come into this building to work, and I'd have to cover my eyes because I would see something going on that wasn't right. And so we've been talking about the trigger to get these some of these improvements in, like the grease interceptor, confined areas for the trash so that it's manageable. One of the questions I believe that you brought up, Mr. Scroggins, was whether there's going to be problems with the odors or noise or whatever to the diners. And the question is, we now control that. We now have it inside. We're going to have mechanical ventilation off there to take the odors up above the roof level. We're going to be able to wash it down. We'll have a drain that goes into a grease trap so the dumpster can be washed right in that confined area, the grease fog container, and all the dirty stuff in the of the operations can be done indoors and controlled better. So right now, it's technically you can't wash the dumpster into the gutter, and that's the only option with the present operation. So this gives us the option of putting it into sewer where it belongs. As far as the height, Bob would mention this. I have a little different height here, measured from about mid-span of the addition of 13'4" to the top of the mansard, from finished floor to top of mansard. The addition is at 10'4" above finished floor, and the sidewalk is approximately 13 inches below finished floor. So if you're standing down here, obviously that adds 1 foot and 1 inch to the massing, if you will. So as you're looking at that, you're getting an extra foot of height. When we first came and talked to Bob about the height, he was concerned about massing, and the original plan was to put it the full height of the existing, and we dropped it to 3 feet to try and help that. We added the horizontal windows to attempt to help that, put the shed roof over here to try and reduce the mass. And you'll see in this photo, and this was a prior drawing and a prior photo, was that we had some vegetation here and not the tall cypress trees. The owner doesn't really want a trellis attached to the building, and when we get into discussion about the electrical enclosure with the green screen, one of the comments of staff is they like the ivy that's growing volunteer growth on the existing wall. And while it does have a great effect, ivy on a stucco wall is not very manageable. And in fact, if you go out there tomorrow, you will see that this wall going into the back door, the ivy has been removed, and you can see a clear example of what that does. It leaves behind, the ivy marks. So managing that ivy on that wall is not desirable from the owner's perspective. And having it on this wall is not desirable either. We believe a compromise is to train hedges up that have a little separation and can be trimmed back and still give you the vegetative and the tiered effect of the building. So the tiering is kind of what we tried to key in on. So if you can visualize these shrubs across here, the horizontal windows, the awning over the doorway, this line, the fascia of the new addition, the shed roof here, and then on up to the full height of the existing building. That was our attempt, and Kit can address this, the architect can address this a little more clearly. So just for clarification, I just wanted to make sure that there are a lot of numbers running around, and we just wanted to confirm these numbers for you. And while this is an 11-foot ceiling, the ceiling down at this plate is roughly 9 foot. So there is some slope from the back pitching to roof drains up here. So while it is a little higher against the existing building, it does pitch forward here. One of the key objectives of this project was to enclose the dirty jobs of doing a restaurant business. And that includes trash handling, fats, oils, and greases handling, laundry handling, and glass, recycled glass and recycled other materials. So what we've tried to do is to enclose everything, and that's one of the reasons we're asking for the full enclosure around the electrical panel, is to control vectors. If you notice, we have at times of the year a real problem with flies and yellow jackets coming off of the dumpster and the fats, oils, and greases bin. So our goal is to get it inside, get it into a watertight space that can be kept clean and minimize the interaction with the outdoors. The landscaping plan, as I mentioned, we have removed the cypress trees. We are still asking for removal of this tree for the reasons that were articulated by Board Member Gates. And we believe that we can do some mitigation somewhere, and we would be looking from staff and the board for what appropriate mitigation we can do for removal of the tree. Just, my experience with construction being done, a foot and a half or a foot from the root structure of a tree is that it's going to do some damage to that tree. And we also would have to prune it back significantly to fit the the trash shed underneath it. The parking spaces, staff recommends moving the parking space, eliminating the walk aisle, moving that space further to the south. We have no problem with that. And we have no problem at all with providing a more detailed landscape plan. We are a little bit hesitant at this point. A lot focuses on the tree removal and some of the other features. So we didn't want to go too far in the landscape plan until we got your direction. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the architect, Kit Ashley, and he can take you through some of the design features real quickly. And please, if you have any questions of me or Kit while he's talking, that would be great. And if it's okay with you, I'll hand you our response to the staff comments and give you a copy of that.
Do please, Mike, I have one. Sorry,
I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
Well, I had just one question, and you had mentioned what the difference was between the finished floor grade and the grade at the sidewalk at the door, essentially.
13 inches.
13 inches.
13 inches, is that what you said?
It is.
Yeah. The existing door is right here, and the elevation difference between this finished floor and the sidewalk is 13 inches. Down at this end of the building, or out to the parking places, this floor drops 4 inches. So it's 4 inches below the building floor. But this point to the sidewalk is also 13 inches. Oddly enough, this point and the sidewalk is 8 inches. So the sidewalk has a
Crowns.
little crown in it. I'm not sure why, but it does help us on this approach landing of this door because we don't have as much elevation difference to deal with.
Answer your question, Rob?
Yes, thank you.
Mike, based on my review of the site and your site plan, it appears to me you were proposing the addition of a new street tree. Am I correct?
No, I'm sorry, we are not. We're not exactly, and maybe, well, here, I can show it up here. This site plan shows a tree right here, which is pretty much perpendicular to where the new door would be. This, if that tree ever existed, must have been removed at some point in time. We're not sure if it had to do with utility work. When I was the Public Works Director, I know we replaced this water line here. I don't think we had to encounter it then, so that was probably 8 years ago. So maybe it was removed before then. But this area is just full of utilities. We have the underground electrical running under the sidewalk, the cable TV, telephone. We have water lines, 3 water lines coming in, a sewer line, and quite a bit. To put that tree in would be very difficult, one, and number 2, it would probably cause problems with underground utilities.
Follow-up question. Do you
And
think
we are
that-
not proposing to put that tree in. I'm sorry. I'm sorry we had it by mistake on the plan from previous plan.
I understand. Follow-up question. Do you think there's another location on the site that would permit the addition of a new street tree?
Not unless we got out into this area here. Possibly we could do something in the parking area, but we've got the cypress trees all along here. This area, there's really nothing we can add. It's pretty well forested. There might be an option to put one here off of this back area.
Thank you, Mike. Anyone else with a question for Mr. Prawl?
Yeah, I just want to get a clarification. It's the intent then that whole dumpster enclosure area, all of that dumpster cleaning and all that activity will take place in that enclosure?
Yes.
Okay, very good. And then where the glass recycling is currently happening, will that move to the dumpster enclosure or will that remain where it is next to the panel?
It all hinges on the tree removal. If the tree remains, it presents some access issues for the activities that go on in through that barn door. So typically I don't have a good answer for you. We had originally planned to put the fog grease out here with the bottle recycling. We now believe that because we don't want to have to put a drain here, it'd be better to have the fog in this building and keep all the dirty stuff over here and maybe move the linen out here. So, and it obviously, to me, is better to have the bottle recycling in here where it has a drain to, doesn't drain out to the sidewalk. So the short answer to your question is yes, it makes sense to put it in there, and depending on whether we have full access on that side door, we'll determine whether it's practical or not.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Questions for Mike Prawl? Thanks, Mike.
Thank you.
We'd be delighted to hear from the architect now.
Thank you. My name's Kit Ashley, CCA Architects. I come into this as an old friend of Mr. Prawls. Not a lot to add. Everybody's pretty much talked about the design, how we arrived at it. What I might touch on from my perspective is the feeling that we had when we went through the design of the parapet as opposed to a lower wall with a tile roof, is that we felt that from a distance where you view the project, it would look more appropriate and more similar to the building, blend in better with the building if we layered it down. And now with the addition of the lower planning, I think that achieves that. The shed roof over the trash area is mimicking the shed roof that is currently there over that area up right behind the street light. Whoops. There we go. And so what we did, we just carried that out there. That is the only tile on the project. And we felt that if we went tile anywhere else, especially at the expanse over the new construction, that would just be more than we really needed from a design standpoint. And the building, I think once we clean up all of the fences and the gates and give it a nice consistent look, it's going to be, I think it's going to be an addition to the street rather than a detraction. The height notwithstanding. One of the items with the electrical closet to get that enclosed is even with enhanced planning on that green screen, we're going to have those gates. You're going to see the electrical panel, and you can look over into that area when you're walking by that. Just felt that wasn't as good an answer as fully enclosing it, especially now we're looking at putting some other storage in there. Comment on the tree. We're kind of beating trees up tonight, aren't we? Proximity to the construction of that's a shiny xylosma, which is most seen as a hedge. And this is one gone nuts and has become a tree, and I understand that that's what it looks like, and that's what it is. But we're going to be within about a foot of that, of the base of the tree, which is going to destroy a root base. And I'm afraid we're going to be pulling that tree out anyway. We're going to do some major trimming just to get the trash area in there. The biggest concern is that we would go to all this work to save this thing and it dies on us. And then we have a compromise plan, having relocated the barn door to have the tree gone and have full access available. I think we can work with staff to come up with a way to mitigate it with a landscape plan, and we would propose that that's what we would do. That's about it. Any questions?
Questions for Mr. Ashley?
Yeah, I'm sorry. So if the tree's removed, the barn door is in the parking lot. If it's not removed, it's on Yount Street.
No. There are two barn doors. There's
Okay.
a
All right.
little elevation. It would move from close to the patio to approximately the middle of that wall,
All right.
so that they could get into it and get around that way. That make sense?
Yeah.
Yes. Does anyone have questions for any remaining member of the applicant's team, or would anyone else from your group like to speak? Okay, so I see no more questions and no more applicant presentation, so we're not taking a formal vote tonight, but we should try to each make as cogent a recommendation as we can to the council. Comment and recommendation, who'd like to begin?
I've got a question of Bob real quick. That side tree that Jason was referring to is now gone because the new street light and all that grass was removed, and it's now all concrete, correct? So there's not putting a tree there anyways.
Yeah, I was just looking at that street light right there is...
That's where the tree ultimately was.
There would be no room.
Okay, okay, very good. Thanks.
I believe it's true that tree wells can be put in curb-adjacent sidewalks.
Right, they can.
With that said, who'd like to begin with comments and
Well,
recommendations to the council?
I can start.
Please do.
And I think what Jason was getting at in terms of the tree that shows up on the plan, if this tree is taken down, there is the possibility of replacing the tree not on the site or along the public right-of-way in this current location, but somewhere else in the town. The effect would still be the same as losing one tree and planting a tree someplace else. So I would suggest maybe that might be a good alternative if, in fact, it's decided to take the tree down. When I came into the meeting tonight, my opinion was leaning more towards taking the tree down. I mean, keeping the tree, sorry. Thinking that it can be worked around. And then I thought about what I saw when I was on the site. And there's a lot of leaves falling on the plastic of the trellis. In terms of the work that's going to be done in that area, as the architect said, you're going to be cutting very close. I mean, in general, you don't want to come within the crown of the tree. And obviously, tree or shrub, you're going to be cutting very close to the base of that tree. So my opinion's changed a bit to think that maybe the tree / shrub can go, but I would like to see what Mike proposed in terms of the Yonge Street elevation where the shrubs that would stand proud of the wall, because I understand where the owner doesn't want to have attachments, because I can see what happens to stucco. That same treatment happened on the south elevation adjacent to where the barn sliding door is. So you'll still get that softening of that elevation as you look from the south. It won't be the same as having the tree there, but I think that the tree is problematic with these plans. And in terms of the plans, I think the plans really clean up what I consider a lot of stuff. And I think it's stuff that's evolved over time, and I understand that. And so I would support the design, and with the stepping of the parapets, I think that that's a good solution as it's been done with the new addition, stepping as it's proposed by the architect. I think that also the doors on the electrical enclosure are better than having it open with the green screen, because I used to be a proponent of green screen, but I've seen that it just doesn't work real well anyplace. And so I would say that that's probably my preferred solution too. But the caveat to you is that I believe that the generator has some airflow requirements, and so there has to be some free area in the louvers and also clearance. So I would take a look at that in terms of the clearance to the face of the generator. And so that would be something that I would just look at before you submit for your permit. And then in terms of some other issues, I think, I'm not sure if ADA requirements are in place for a back-of-the-house situation like this, but there is an 8-foot or an 8-inch separation between finished floor and sidewalk. You do need a ramp to wheel things in and out. You can't have a step up, and so I understand it. So if there's no ADA requirement, then you're good. Let's see. Another idea, as staff has suggested that a separate landscape plan be submitted to the planning department and approved by them, because I think you have a lot of utilities there, and I think you have a schematic plan that doesn't really take into account all those things that are happening there. So I would, as you get farther into what's there, as Mike said, and also what will be there, you're not going to have a lot of depth for planting, and I think you're going to have to choose your shrubbery accordingly. I think that you might want to take a look at, you're talking about maybe linen access in the area where the recycling is right now, but I just wonder about walking all the way around the sidewalk and going and get the linen and walking back again. In either location, whether it's in the south-facing shed or where the generator is. There's no doors. There's only one door going into the back of the house, and so it may be awkward to be constantly accessing, especially linens. But all in all, I think it's a very good improvement over to what's there now, and with some landscaping, I think it'll be nice and clean. The other part of it is, this is a good picture, is that we're thinking about this this austere mass of building, but in fact, the street trees really mitigate sort of the view across the street, and as you're walking by it, they'll still be to your right, so I'm less concerned about that. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Anglin. If you'd like to follow.
Well, I think I've made my opinions about the tree known, but I think it's a tremendous upgrade and fully support the project, and is obviously thought through, and Bob is an asset to the town, and we appreciate all he does for us. So, nice project.
Thank you, Mr. Gates.
In the spirit of brevity and not being redundant, I tend to agree 100% with Bob's sentiments on the tree and the issues around the tree. And Rob's kind of said everything I would have said in terms of the project. I think it's definitely going to add to the restaurant overall, and the sidewalk curb appeal. And I just going back to the landscaping, you know, if we're taking out a tree, I agree with Jason. We should try to figure out where to put another tree, and or on property figure out a way to keep the property looking soft, as staff was indicating. So, you know, the addition of I said agriculture, but landscaping plan would probably be helpful for everyone. And I look forward to hopefully seeing this in effect here shortly.
Thank you, Mr. Scoggins. Mr. Durham.
Yeah, I just want to comment, first of all, as someone who travels past this spot 7 days a week, probably 2 or 3 times a day, whether on foot, my bike, or a car, this is a huge improvement for Yon Street, especially given what's across the street with Bartisono. So I'm excited to see it happen. I personally think that the enclosures where the electrical panel is and the recycling, given the fact it's even coming off the curb a little bit, and someone who walks by there all the time, I think those large doors are called for and needed in that spot, and that any sort of massing on, quote-unquote massing on the sidewalk is definitely negated by what it's covering with the panel, and whether it be dirty linens or recycling, both of which I have no problem there. I think it's it should be fully covered. I'm happy to see that tree go. I find it interesting that we thought it nicely framed the patio, when in fact it's more framing the waiter service station than it is the patio. So we always, it was nice to concentrate on that, but I don't think we need it. But the idea of replacing the tree is always a positive. Lastly, the parking. I'm excited to see it be used for employee parking. So that's it.
Thank you, Mr. Durham. This has long been a really difficult site. It's been a difficult site since Washington Street was Highway 29, and then Highway 29 was meeting the original block grants in Yountville. It was a difficult site when it was the gas station. It's now an asset to the town. I agree that what exists there now is unsightly. It does look like several things were added over the years, and that this project, as proposed, by which specifically I mean Hurley's Restaurant Option A, is a tremendous improvement. So I urge the council to approve it with the following supplemental comments, much of which you've presented. 1, it's okay to remove the Chinese iasma, if that's correct. Find a place on the site for a new street tree, or plant one elsewhere in town to mitigate it. The addition of the low landscaping, I encourage it to be 3 to 6 feet tall from back of sidewalk to face of new building. Include that in your package to the council. Deletion of the cypresses. Yes, they don't appeal to me, and I wish you well. Good night.
Thank you.
We will now proceed to item 8.2. You're not all staying? Wow.
There's not even football on.
Item 8.2, zoning and design ordinance amendments for Old Town. Bunch of ne'er-do-wells.
You have before you the proposed amendments to the zoning ordinance and the design ordinance that are the result of the zoning ordinance and design ordinance ad hoc committee. And it was a committee formed by the council in 2011. And the 4 members of that committee were 2 council members, Mayor Dunbar and Member Hall, and 2 ZDRB members, Chair Janes and Member Anglin. And over the course of the year, the committee met 5 times and took a tour of Old Town. The first element of its effort was to better define acceptable architectural design styles for Old Town and really to call out what was inappropriate. So to that end, we've added descriptions of shapes, materials, and fenestration that are common to Old Town, and we added some of the elements of Tuscan and Mediterranean design that are perhaps not in keeping with that character. We added a new section on exterior materials that goes into much greater detail on what's acceptable and what isn't. And we've clarified the different sections on roof materials, windows, porches, and driveways, and adding new requirements for parking shoulders and driveways and aprons. That effort led to some changes to residential buildings in general, some of which was cleanup and some of which were some new concepts. We've established maximum caps on the different residential structures so that oversized lots don't feature very large oversized buildings. We've deleted the FAR exemptions from all of the different sections of the residential building chapter and added it to the definition section. And then we've added an exception for 2-story buildings when the 50% threshold has been reached. To the accessory buildings and facilities section, we've really clarified what items fall into the landscape element category and which are accessory structures because of the different rules that apply. And to definitions, we've modified many of the definitions and notably added a definition for duplex. So we're really pleased with the design ordinance amendments that came out of this committee. We're presenting them to you for your first view and comment. We'll be taking this to Town Council on November 20th. And so these changes should be enacted shortly. So I'm happy to take any comments you have.
A hearty yes, and thank you for all your time.
Really?
Yes.
Very nice.
That's all I got. Anyone else?
I find that hard to believe.
No other comments? Thanks very much. I
Great.
think the consensus
I
is
think it's a good
recommend
document. I
approval.
think
You guys are
great
awesome.
improvements.
Item 9.1, Chair and Vice Chair. As I've said before, I think it is helpful for organizations such as this to have a regular turnover. Board of Supervisors, I think, has a good example where it automatically rotates every year. So with that said, first, would anyone like to volunteer? And I encourage it. It's not a sinecure.
I'd like to make a statement first. And that is, in the previous meetings where we had this discussion scheduled, I had told Sandra and some of you that I didn't want to be considered for the chair or the vice chair. And now I want to tell you why. Peggy and I are in the process of buying a house in southern Utah near Zion National Park. And so we're going to be closing in January. And so obviously I didn't think it was fair that I continue in a position of responsibility on this committee. But that being said, I'm here through January. So it's a great opportunity for us, but I'm going to miss being on the ZDRB. We are going to maintain our house here in Yountville, but this isn't going to be our primary residence. So unfortunately, I'll have to step down from the ZDRB after the January meeting. So
Sounds exciting, though.
it's a great next step for us, and Utah is a very incredible place, and we've spent a lot of time there, and My wife Peggy's passionate about the Red Rock, so it's.
Happy wife, happy life.
Exactly, exactly. So, that being said, it's, if Jason does not want to continue in some capacity, then it's the three of you and maybe the replacement for me.
I have a comment. I don't intend to seek to re-interview for a ZDRB when my term expires in July, I believe it is. So it doesn't make sense to send me up there as a chairman. By the time I learn Robert's Rules of Order, I'd be termed out. So I would highly encourage Jason to continue in his excellent work and guide us all forward until we can figure out what to do some other time.
Kindly put, thank you. But any volunteers? Jeff, Jason, either of you wish to? You're encouraged to?
But if you're going to stay on, that's fine. Here's my thing. I'd be, much to the chagrin of someone else involved, I'd be more than happy to step up, but not at the expense of having you on here in the capacity that you've done so far. So,
Mr. Scoggins, do you wish to volunteer before?
Well, I guess part of my hesitation is not fully understanding what the roles and responsibilities are. So I think that would be a first step for me. So I don't know if that means we have to postpone this decision-making for another session, but I certainly don't know what I'm getting myself into by volunteering at this moment, other than I understand the obvious that we're all doing here and what you seem to be doing. But I would agree with others that seeing you stepping down from that role seems like a step backwards. So
Kindly put, thank you. Mr. Durham, will you accept a nomination?
I will.
I would like to nominate Jeff Durham to be chairman.
Second.
Thank you.
Aye.
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 Excellent. Would anyone care to volunteer to be vice chairman?
I guess I would be willing to volunteer for vice chairman.
Excellent. I will nominate Mr. Scoggins to be vice chair.
Second.
Everyone in favor?
Aye.
In favor.
Aye.
Excellent.
So it's a job in training, It's
Exactly. Well,
That's
chair
young
elect.
guys to come in and
I
young
understand.
people to come in and take over.
I understand.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.
I think it will be well served. I'm sure we will, I should say. And I've dallied, so I think this term is fairly brief anyway.
I would just like to thank Jason for the years that he's been chair, because he's done amazing things.
Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, very kind. Do we all agree we should adjourn?
Yes.
Yes.
Good night.
All right.
I thought we'd be here until 10 o'clock.
Me
too.
too.
I thought-
I planned
thought
on
this was
8:30
like-
right now.